Alrighty, welcome to the 62nd edition of Before the Battle. I am Nick Baldwin, and joining me for the first time in quite some time, this guy was part of the show last year. He, due to us having scheduling difficulties, he couldn't continue, but he's back, filling in on short notice for West Riddle, middleweight fighter, former UFC fighter, Mike Biggie Rhodes. Mike, really appreciate the time. How are you?
Man, I'm doing good, man. I'm happy to be back on the show. Hopefully, I can keep my streak that I left, behind of always being right and picking these fights correctly.
That's right. All right. Joining us as always, writer for MMAfighting.com, Jed Meshew. Jed, how's it going?
I'm good, man. How are you doing today?
I am pretty fantastic. Coming off, a somewhat lackluster UFC 209 card. I'm sure for Biggie Rhodes here, it wasn't as lackluster because it was his teammate Tyron Woodley, defending and remaining the UFC welterweight champion. I do want to get your thoughts, Biggie, real quick on that fight. Overall, I know you scored it for Woodley. Overall, what were your thoughts? Were you still, as a teammate, as a friend of Tyron, were you still happy with his performance?
If I said that I was completely and utterly happy with his performance, I think I'd be lying to you guys. I saw the work he put in and day out, and I knew exactly what the game plan was supposed to be. I saw him implementing that every day at the gym with Sage and the other guys he's brought in to mimic that Wonder Boy style. And definitely everything he said before the fight was what he was planning on doing, going forward, being way more aggressive, offensively wrestling and everything like that is the things that he trained to do. And then the fight, it just didn't happen as much. Obviously, you get in there sometimes and the things that you trained, you're just not seeing the keys and the reads that you thought you were. And I think it made him a little bit hesitant, as we've seen, on both sides. But ultimately, I did give the fight to Tyron. I did score it for him. I gave him the second, the third, and the fifth round, obviously, with him dropping Wonder Boy in the fifth round. So I did score the fight for Tyron, and I'm glad that he won. And, he's done with that chapter in his career and seeing him knock guys out and get these finishes.
Alrighty, fair enough. Jed, do you care to, add your thoughts on Woodley Wonderboy 2 that happened this past weekend?
No. I think most people have talked about it a lot. I scored a draw. I don't have any problem with giving Woodley the win. I think if you're going to score it for Woodley, I think it does come down to round 2. That's the round where, they landed the same amount of strikes. And then it's whether you think his strikes are more effective than Thompson's. And if you don't, then you basically have to give the round to Thompson. If you think that their strikes were even, you basically have to give the round to Thompson as far as octagon control. I know that's a heated term these days, but I've been told by people that were cage side, other people at MMA fighting, that they think that Woodley should have won, that the strikes he landed around 8 were better. On screen, it didn't look, they looked pretty similar to everything that was going on, and so I gave it to Thompson. It's fine. It's one of those results where, like, if you had scored it for Stephen Thompson, I would have had a problem with that. I think he won 3 rounds, but I think round 5 should be a 10-8. I know that's up for debate as far as how the rules are actually written, but it's one of those things where, like, okay, if you follow the letter of the rules and somehow scored it for Thompson, is anybody going to be happy with that result, with Stephen Thompson winning that fight? And I don't think, racist would be happy with it, I guess, but, like, it's not, nobody who, like, is logically cares about fighting. We've now watched them fight for 50 minutes. And I think the fights looked oddly similar, just sort of with the rounds restructured, there's a lot of inactivity, a lot of, both guys are kind of counter fighters. So they're waiting, looking for openings. And at the end of the day, I think we can say whether he has manifested it, extremely clearly or not. I think we can say pretty confidently that Tyron Woodley's going to win more often than he's going to lose that fight, just because he's a better fighter. Or at least he's a better fighter in this particular matchup, I guess. I hope they never fight again. I hope I never have
on that.
I don't think anybody wants to see a third one between them ever, because it'll probably look the same. They'll stare at each other for a while, and Thompson might pick up points here and there, but the real offense will be Tyron's. The only thing, and you spoke to this a bit, Biggie. The only thing I would like to see if they did fight again, I don't know this for certain, but if off the top of my head, it feels like Woodley was like 100% in shooting for takedowns, and in over the course of both fights, he only really tried for 2, and he got both of them. And in the first fight, in the first fight, when I rewatched it, I gave their 205 fight, I gave that first round a 10-8 because Tyron Woodley really kind of beasted on him at the end there. In this fight, he controlled very well, and he was doing that hand trap where he was reaching under the back and collapsing that sort of like policeman grip that Khabib Nurmagomedov does a lot to trap Thompson's post arm to get back up, and he was just ramming lefts into him. And once he did that, when he came out in the third round and like looked to take it down, I was like, oh man, if he does this, sweet, this like something's gonna happen because he's gonna force the issue. And then he got back. I don't necessarily think that's a wrong decision. Actually, in many ways, I think what Tyron Woodley did, while not fan friendly, perhaps, was pretty good tactics. He nullified Stephen Thompson, which not many people have done. But if they fight again, I would like an assurance that Woodley's going to actually take him down, because I think if he takes him down, he gets him out of there. If he's focused on consistently wrestling Stephen Thompson, I do think that he has clearly showed himself to be the better guy. So that's all I got on it.
Alrighty. Well, that was a lot more than what I thought you were gonna have, because you said no at the beginning.
I got started, and it just happened.
I mean, 5 minutes after talking about making the show more brief, here you go. Talk about 10 minutes on not 10, but 5 minutes on not the best fight we've ever seen, but it is what it is. With that, let's move on to this weekend's card. Let's move on to the future. UFC Fight Night 107 goes down from Fortaleza, Brazil tomorrow night. We are going to do the prelims a bit more brief than we usually do, just because our past few shows have been almost topping 2 hours. So, I mean, not everybody's going to want to sit through an hour of, prelim preview. So we're going to make the prelims a bit more brief, and then, make the main card a bit, typical. So we'll start out with the first fight of the night on Fight Pass. Yes.
I was going to say, should I recap last week?
Yes, let's find out, who came up on top as far as picks go and DraftKings. I assume I came in third again for DraftKings, because that's kind of what I do.
You did, but it was pretty close. It's unfortunate. Right. It's unfortunate that Wes isn't here to have to bend the knee and give up his picking crown, because this week, after 2 in a row, Wes Riddle has lost. Both you and I tied with a stellar record of 4-7. It was a bad week for the Before the Battle crowd. Wes came in at 3-8. We picked, I think, almost entirely different winners though. So if we could mix our shit together, maybe we'd be good. I also managed to snipe the Lando Tamer fight being fight of the night. So big ups for me. And then DraftKings, I was the winner this week, predominantly on the back of Pedro and Tabura, getting me a lot of points. And then Bektic still put up a ton of DraftKings points despite getting KO'd in the third. So that was nice for him. That shows you, I don't know, Mike, I don't know how much you follow DraftKings or whatever, but Bektic put up 74 points, which is like, that's about the average for winning a fight. That's how much ass of Darren Elkins was getting kicked for 10 minutes until Darren Elkins just is one tough son of a bitch, man, and came back and did that. So
I looked past Elkins' toughness. I knew it would, play into the fight a little bit, but man, not that much.
Here's the thing,
I put it on Twitter, man. You cannot deny the grind of Darren Elkins, man. And it made me a lot of money. I bet I put the house down on him. So I was until he came through with that that emphatic finish in the end. But it definitely came out on the right side for me.
I was pissed because I also believed in Elkins' toughness, but he's never really showed himself to be the kind of guy who's going to come back and KO it. And so I just thought he was going to be real tough and Bektic was going to win a decision. And I lost money on that, and Mirsad Bektic kind of hurt me there. But yeah. So this week, you and I tied for the picking, and I am the DraftKings champion. So now
Alrighty.
we can move onward.
Well, Biggie, right off the top on the show, talked about beating us both this weekend with our records. I mean, it doesn't seem like it'll be too difficult of a task.
To be fair, we both would have at least been winning had the Sanders and Bektic fights continued in the manner they started out as.
Right. I mean,
two of the most impressive comebacks ever in the UFC. Like,
yep. Biggie, were you gonna say something or no?
I was just saying I have both of those fights going the other way. Even though Luke Sanders is a friend of mine, I just thought this would be a very tough matchup for him. I definitely did not see it going the manner that it went. I thought that it would have been a submission earlier in the fight, just due to the competition level that they have both faced. I just thought that this was definitely the tougher matchup, Sanders, rather than the other way around.
Alrighty, let's move on to bigger and better things. Well, maybe not. Gareth McClellan taking on Paulo Borchinha, a newcomer to the UFC in the first fight of UFC Fortaleza tomorrow night. Jed, we'll start with you. I mean, can you what do you know about Paulo Borchinha, the newcomer here, and how do you think he matches up against Soulja Boy?
Well, Borchinha, I mean, if you're a real diehard UFC person, you have some exposure to him. He was on Tough Brazil 3 when like 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember how long ago that was. He got bounced in the. I think he won his fight to get in the house and got bounced in the quarters or whatever. After a really tough fight, I went back and watched it, and I can't recall off the top of my head who that was against. But he came out looking like gangbusters, won the first round, and it just sort of gassed out and lost to just a tougher guy. And I think there's potential that maybe that same thing happens here because Gareth McClellan, he doesn't bring like a whole, he's kind of an every guy. He's competent everywhere, jack of all trades, master of none. The most things that stand out about him is his toughness, because he's a real durable guy. He's never out of a fight. And he attacks the body well. So because Costa has showed, that maybe he does gas, that gives me a little bit of concern. But I think Borchinha is just a much better athlete, a much better grappler. And he's shown lately on the regional circuit a surprising amount of pop in his hands. So I'm picking Borchinha. I think that, McClellan's in it. I wouldn't count him out, but I think Borchinha is going to take the fight.
All right, Biggie, do you know much about Paulo Borchinha, and how do you see his debut going out against Gareth McClellan?
I definitely don't know too much about Paulo, but I've seen a lot of people all over Twitter for some reason being really high on the guy as a fighter, and not too many people are very high on the soldier on the other side. Not really sure on which way I should pick on this one. Like I said, I don't know much about either fighter, but I'll take Garrett just because he's been in the UFC. Might get to the first-time fighter as far as fighting in the UFC, and then the fight also being in Brazil. Having fought in Brazil, I know that there's a lot of pressure on the Brazilian fighters in front of their home country, and those people show up early. It's not like the prelims out in Vegas where it's quiet in there, man. That place gets packed. You're going to be screaming and yelling, and I think that might get at the the time with the organization. So I'm just going to take Garrett here on a whim, but I'm not extremely confident in that pick.
Alrighty, I will go with Paulo Borchinha. I'm going to make this quick, though. I feel he, like Jed said, he's a better athlete. He's a better grappler, probably better on the feet as well. The biggest thing going from McClellan is his toughness and his will, but, I mean, it's not enough to take you. I mean, even Darren Elkins, obviously, is not just riding on toughness. He has some skills, obviously. McClellan, he's a grinder. He's barely UFC caliber, in my opinion. Borchinha does have the gas tank issue, so that's a concern. If McClellan can weather the storm, he could take this into deep waters and win, but I'll go with Borchinha to probably finish within 10 minutes, I'd say. Next up, we got Honey Jason taking on Jeremy JBC Kennedy, the feature Fight Pass prelim. Jed, are you going to go with the Brazilian here or the Canadian?
Man, this is the type of fight we're seeing a lot more in the UFC, and I feel like I just consistently predict this one wrong, and I'm gonna stick with the exact same reasoning that I do every time. Ronnie Jason is just a phenomenal athlete, and he is extremely dangerous, at multiple phases, but he kind of lacks that sort of he lacks like the sinews that hold a real like a game together. He's not a round winner. He'll pop off some really great offense, but he's not gonna consistently do it. Sometimes he'll just like get taken down, and instead of look to get back up, he'll just chase submissions and lose a round because he's going for stuff off his back, but he's not controlling and he's getting beat up in the process. And Kennedy's the opposite. He made his debut, got a real grinding win. He's a real young guy. We're not really sure what Kennedy is yet. He's real young, and I'm not sure even he knows what he is. But what I do know about him is that he is a very competent grappler. That he's a tough, durable kid. That he has the opportunity to be improving a lot more. And Ronnie Jason is mostly a finished product. And it's just hard every time for me to pick the person who is gonna lose rounds. So I'm gonna pick Jeremy Kennedy to impose a grappling based game plan. Ronnie Jason hits really hard. Maybe he just lamps him. Also can just catch anybody in a submission, mostly off his back. But I think Kennedy's good enough top position grappler, sticky enough to grind out a real close win.
All right, and Biggie, do you agree with Jed here? Are you going to go with the undefeated Jeremy Kennedy, or do you think Honey Jason can pull off the slight upset? I believe he is a slight underdog, although the odds are close.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually go with Hani Jason on this fight. Um, I did watch Kennedy's first fight, obviously when he fought Alex Ricci, a weight class up, and he was able to wrestle and control Ricci for a lot of that fight. I had to watch that because my new teammate Paul Felder had, he just fought and defeated Alex Ricci. So I did watch a lot of that fight. That being said, if it is a round by round fight, Kennedy is definitely the person who can win and control the rounds. I just think that down in Brazil, once again, man, down there in that environment, it's going to be something different. Going from fighting in Canada where people are cheering and rooting for you to people chanting, "You will die," especially in front of Honey Jason, who throws leather. And definitely, I believe it has the submission edge. So I just see him getting the younger, less experienced fighter in Kennedy out of there in under 2 rounds. I think he lands something big, and then he jumps on the neck, and I can see him finishing with a submission here.
Yeah, this is a tough one to call. Jeremy Kennedy, I think he'll be more comfortable down at featherweight, his proper weight class. Of course, as Biggie mentioned, he did make his debut against Alessandro Ricci last year at lightweight, upper weight class. So he'll be a bit more comfortable where most of his fights have been. Honey Jason, he's kind of hit and miss. I feel he's not. He just doesn't. He can't always put it together. Sometimes he looks great, sometimes not so much. And I think Jeremy Kennedy is a bit more consistent, though. Of course, he hasn't been in the UFC nearly as long. The experience goes to Jason, of course, and Jason is a very sneaky grappler. He can pull off some funky submissions, but I think Jeremy Kennedy, his fundamentals are a bit better despite having the youth and inexperience on his side. I think he can get the job done. He's fairly gritty. He's a grinder, and I think he holds Honey Jason down for the majority of the fight. Scores a little bit of offense, but I don't think this will be, fight of the night candidate or anything like that. But give me Jeremy Kennedy by unanimous decision. Next up, kicking off the FS1 prelims, we got Michel Prazeres taking on Josh the People's Warrior Berkman. Not too sure if he's the People's Warrior anymore, but Biggie, we'll start with you. Are you going to go with the Tractor here or Josh Berkman?
Man, this is another one of those fights that's just really too close to be very, very confident in either pick either side. I mean, Josh Berkman just lost to a guy that, I defeated early in my pro career, who I definitely don't see as UFC caliber. And he went out there and Josh Berkman just kind of, laid an egg. He's going down to Brazil. I don't like his weight cutting situation. I don't like how rough they are on him, especially while traveling to Brazil. What has the Tractor done, lately? It's really hard for me to pick something confidently, but I think Josh Berkman stays on the schneid, and I think that Michael Pizarris, or is it Michelle, however you say that, I think he gets the win down in Brazil.
Alrighty, and Jed, are you going to go with Braceras here, or do you think Berkman gets back into the winning column?
I basically think everything Mike said, so I won't elaborate too much. I don't love Berkman hasn't really looked good at lightweight, and the travel, the fact that he's probably past his prime, the fact that he might not really have his head in the game anymore. I think there's a lot of things. I do think the fight's way closer than the odds say. Braceras is like a minus 250 favorite or something, and that seems a little off, but I'm still going to pick him to win. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a rule with picking Josh Berkman fights, and that's not pick Josh Berkman, and it's worked for, I think, because he did get that one win in the UFC recently. Which who did he beat again? Does anybody remember? I don't. Yeah, I'm not.
KJ Nunes.
TJ Nunes, right? That was a close one,
And
but
came fire after that. Yeah, he was definitely shot at that point.
yeah, exactly. Other than that fight, not picking Berkman since his return to the UFC a couple years back has worked. I'm going to continue that. I mean, Michel Prazeres, he's a guy I've looked to fade in the past, but he looked maybe the best he's ever looked. I mean, in his last fight against Gilbert Burns, he really shut down the BJJ ace with improving striking, improving Muay Thai. I liked his game in that fight, and not the most visibly pleasing, but he got the job done. Berkman, just a guy who's not UFC caliber. I hate the fact that he's at lightweight. He should not be at 155 pounds, cutting a lot, too much weight in my opinion. I like Braceras here. I like him quite a bit. The odds maybe a bit long, but I like Braceras to outpoint Berkman on the feet, and more of a fade on Berkman than anything. But I think Braceras slowly is actually getting a bit better than he was a couple years back. So give me Braceras by decision. Next up, we got Hanayaya taking on Joe Soda in what could be a really, really fun grappling match. Jed, are you going to go with the underdog here, the American, or do you think Hanayaya gets the job done?
It's another fight where I think the odds are probably a little bit skewed. I am going to pick Yaya just eventually at the end, but I think Joe Soto has a better chance than plus 155 would indicate. Ronnie Yaya is just he's an extremely accomplished Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu player, and he's turned that into a really successful MMA career. Despite not really having much of a striking game to go on, he's dogged on the ground and just really good at getting there and really good at taking advantage of the positions he thrives in. Soto is also a guy who probably does his best work as a grappler, but I think Soto's a little bit better on the feet. And so if Soto could turn this into a striking match, I think it is his fight to lose. Unfortunately, I don't think Joe Soto is that great of a defensive wrestler. And while Ronnie Yaya is not like an all-American wrestler, he's a good enough wrestler to get it done. He reminds me in a lot of ways of Demian Maia in that he has many avenues to get a fight to the floor. And, even if he's not, I don't know, I realize now that he reminds me of Demian Maia, sort of, but I'm not putting him on the same level. I want to be clear. Demian Maia is the best grappler in the history of grappling, probably. But he can get the fight to the floor despite you looking at him and thinking, man, he's not a great takedown artist. And he can just doggedly pursue a takedown and wind up and get there. So because Joe Soto is not a great defensive wrestler, I think Yaya can compete enough. Soto's not like that great on the feet. I think Yaya is not going to be obliterated there, and he'll be able to work takedowns. And Soto can scramble, but I don't think he's going to really be able to scramble that well against Yaya. So I think we might be in for some fun ground exchanges, but I'm going to pick Yaya by decision.
And Biggie, what do you think? Hanayaya and Joe Soto, who you got here?
I'm actually going to go with Joe Soto here. Not the caliber on paper, at least, a grappler as of a Ronnie Yaya. But Joe Soto is someone who competes all the time in the jiu-jitsu world. He's done a couple of the EBI invitationals. I think he won his last fight via heel hook with a pretty nasty transition down on the ground. He does have a wrestling background. I do agree with what you said, though. He doesn't have a terribly or a great takedown defense. He's more of an offensive wrestler with his takedowns. You know, he wrestled and was a roommate with John Jones at Iowa Central at the same time or a year before or after when Cain Velasquez was there. So a very good program he wrestled at junior college. I think that he will control the wrestling, even though he's not a great defensive wrestler. I think that he has to stay away from the cage. Ronnie Yaya's best takedowns come up against the cage where he's, you know, sticking legs in and kind of dragging you to the ground. And I think if Joe Soto's on top, he's a good enough grappler to remain on top and out of danger. He fought on the feet really, really well against TJ for that long amount of time on short notice. Soto's the more complete fighter, and I think he squeaks out a razor close decision down in Brazil.
This is a really, really tough matchup. I am going to go with Joe Soto and agree with Biggie here, but the thing is, it is in Brazil, and you know, Brazilian judging, not always the fairest. Sometimes it's you know, far from that, and just the fact that Yaya is a lot better at holding position and, you know, getting position, so that could, you know, look good in the judge's eyes. While I honestly think Soto will be the more active guy on the ground, looking for interesting submissions, heel hooks like he did in his last fight, etc., etc. So it's a tough one to call. I'm going to go with Soto because I ultimately think he's a better striker and he has more ways to win. I think he can hang with Yaya on the match. I think on paper Yaya is the better grappler overall, but Soto's sneaky on the ground, and he's of course the better striker. Yaya really doesn't have much on the feet, so Soto has more ways to win. It's going to be a tough one. Yaya will get Soto down, and it just really comes down to, does Soto get up and look for, you know, something on the ground? Can he catch Yaya? Anything's possible. We've seen crazier things happen. It's a tough one. I'll say Joe Soto by decision, but if Yaya gets the win, it wouldn't be surprising one bit. Next up, we got another, you know, a fight that could end up being another really entertaining grappling match. Sergio the Panther Moraes taking on newcomer Davey the Tasmanian Devil Ramos. Jed, are you going to go with the newcomer here, or do you think Sergio Moraes gets the job done?
Excuse me, sorry. I'm actually gonna go with the underdog, and for a lot of the reasons Mike said for his last pick. You know, it is in many ways kind of a similar fight. You do have two guys who are really talented grapplers. You know, people in MMA who've been around, who've been following the UFC probably know who Sergio Moraes is. You know, multiple-time world champion in BJJ. Really an elite level guy on the ground. Absolutely. They probably don't know Davi Ramos. Davi Ramos won an ADCC title a couple of years ago. And there's been a clip of the final match floating around where he hits this absurd, like, jumping, diving armbar. That's amazing. You're talking about a guy who is extremely talented as a grappler as well, and whose most of his credentials come from no-gi, and his game has developed really well for MMA purposes, his grappling game. To kind of blitz through it real quick, I think Moraes is a little bit better on the feet technically at this point, but I do think Moraes is also prone to swinging wildly, and he's not a great defensive wrestler. Whereas I think Davi Ramos is a better defensive wrestler and a much better offensive wrestler, and will be able to take Moraes down. And on top, despite the fact that Sergio Moraes is a really good grappler, obviously I think Davi Ramos is good enough to hang there. So I'm picking Davi Ramos in an upset.
Alrighty, and Biggie, do you agree? Are you going to go with the underdog here, the Tasmanian Devil, the newcomer, or will the Panther get the job done?
I agree with a lot of the things he said. You know, Davi Ramos is a very talented grappler. If people don't know that, they need to look him up. He's very, very good on the ground. And like you said, it's more of the no-gi variety, which pans out a little bit better for MMA, obviously. The only thing I don't like about this matchup is, or a couple of things I don't like, short notice. 2, he's actually a lightweight and not a welterweight. So he's going to definitely be the smaller fighter of the two, which I think will allow to kind of, you know, be better than he normally is defensively as in his wrestling. Is just because the pure size advantage he will have, the UFC experience as well. I'm going to pick Sergio Moraes here. The victory, not going to be a stellar performance, definitely see him squeaking it out. Um, split decision or majority decision type of victory. I don't think it's too exciting, but I'm picking him as the winner.
And this is another tough one to call, similar to the last fight. Two grapplers that, well, I mean, it could be a really fun, we could see really fun exchanges on the mat, or we could see a relatively sloppy kickboxing match. And honestly, I'm leaning towards the latter a bit. I think we'll see quite a bit of grappling, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see at least half the fight contested on the feet. And there, Sergio Moraes is a better fighter. He's improving on the feet. He's still a bit funky, but it seems to work for him a little bit, anyways. And going up against another grappler who's obviously not known for his striking, he should definitely have the striking advantage here. And he's a bigger guy. As Biggie said, Ramos is stepping up on quite a bit short notice. I like Sergio Moraes here, not by a ton, just because Ramos is a very great grappler as well. Moraes, though, as well. I mean, is as well. You can't, count out Sergio Moraes on the ground whatsoever. I think the ground work will be really close. I mean, it's honestly flip a coin. Moraes is a bit wild, and he's the type of fighter that he gives away fights almost. I mean, he wins more than he loses, of course, but he's just that type of guy who, if he makes a mistake and it results in a loss, you're not going to be that surprised. In my opinion, that's kind of what I think of him anyways. But I'm going to go with him. It's going to be a tough one. But I'll go Moraes by decision. Next up, we got a really interesting lightweight matchup between Francisco Massaranduba Trinaldo taking on Kevin the Motown Phenom Lee. Biggie, are you going to go with the Brazilian or the American?
I'm going to have to go with the American and my buddy Kevin Lee. I think he continues to impress. I've been impressed with his mentality change since the Leo Santos fight. I think he's still uber confident in himself, maybe over confident, in himself, but he's no longer taking opponents lightly. I think he knows that he has a very tough ahead of him. Francisco's no joke. He beat Ross Pearson. He's on, I think, the second longest winning streak, or third, tied for that lightweight division. So he's definitely no joke. I think that Kevin Lee just holds the advantage in pretty much every category of MMA. I think he's the younger, faster fighter. I think he's the better wrestler. I think he is the better grappler. They have the edge in knockout power, but I think that Kevin Lee has the advantage in output. So I'm picking Kevin Lee here. I don't know if he quite gets the finish. Francisco's pretty tough, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he was able to get the finish. But I'm definitely going with Kevin Lee here, getting the victory.
Jed, who do you got? Kevin Lee or Francisco Trinaldo?
This might be the first time we've agreed in a fight. I'm also picking Kevin Lee for a lot of the same reasons. I think this fight's actually pretty close. Francisco Trinaldo is on an absolute tear, 6 in a row, I think, with some pretty good names mixed in there. And that's, if he wins it, whoever wins this fight they get moved into, maybe getting it's tough because in the division's so stacked, but either one of these guys picking up a win here moves them a lot closer to the area of true title contention. But ultimately I'm going with Kevin Lee because it's like Mike said, he is younger. He's 12 years younger than Massaranduba. He has 7 inches of reach on him. He's faster. He's probably stronger, although maybe that's not accurate. I can't speak to that totally, but it looks like that way. And really the big thing for me is Massaranduba is not a great defensive wrestler either, and Kevin Lee is extremely good at taking people down. He got a great double. He can set up shots up against the cage or in open space, and I think that on the feet he can be competitive, especially with that huge reach advantage he's going to enjoy. And if things get a little hairy there, I think he can just kind of take Trinaldo down and grind him away if he has to. So I'm picking Kevin Lee, this is the fight might be my favorite fight on the card. Certainly my favorite fight of the undercard.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. This is a really, really intriguing matchup, and it's a tough one. Similar to a lot of these fights on this undercard, Trinaldo, he's on so much momentum right now. He's on a tear. It's you have to wonder what is it going to take to get this guy into the L column. I mean, is it Kevin Lee? I'm not so sure. Francisco Trinaldo is the much better striker. And I see him putting on quite the kickboxing clinic. Of course, Kevin Lee is a fantastic wrestler. That's what he's known for. And Trinaldo, as Jed said, doesn't have the best takedown defense. So I could absolutely see Kevin Lee grinding this one out. He's the better athlete, and if he gets takedown after takedown after takedown, I won't be too shocked. But I do think Ronaldo, his overall game has gotten a lot better. He's really, he's made strides overall from what we've seen. He went from a guy who no one really talked about as a potential contender in this division, and now he's number 11 on the cusp of, a top 10 opponent and whatnot after this fight. If he gets by Kevin Lee is a lot younger, but usually I definitely over guys that are older. But in this case, it's almost the opposite. Just because Kevin Lee, he's young, but he's like, to me, he's not mature enough. He makes, I don't know. He looks past opponents. We saw that against Leo Santos. Of course, he's changed that a little bit, but it's so hard to for sure. He's a bit inconsistent for my liking. Give me Trinaldo to defend enough takedowns, keep it on the feet for the majority of the fight. I do see him getting taken down at least once or twice, but I think Trinaldo gets the job done. It's going to be tight, but give me Trinaldo by unanimous decision. And that brings us to the FS1 main card starting at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Kicking things off, Alex Cowboy Oliveira taking on Tim the Dirty Bird Means. Number 2, this of course happened at UFC 207 last December, not that long ago. That is of course because Tim Means landed an illegal knee, or maybe it was 2, I forget. And the
were they illegal? Were they? Because Mark Ratner sure as shit didn't know.
Yeah, man, that's it's still terrible. So yeah, illegal knees, and Oliveira did not continue. Therefore, it was declared a no contest. Jed, are you going to go with Tim Means here or Alex Oliveira?
Before we get to that, I have to say it because I can't not. Like, one, it still blows my mind that Mark Ratner, who literally for years that was his job, didn't know that those were illegal and then said that they weren't. That is baffling. And then also as a corollary, Tim Means is really lucky that he didn't do something stupid that cost him a fight, because he got away with a no contest and that fight should have been a DQ. He illegally struck a dude and it resulted in the end of the bout. That's a DQ. And he's lucky that that worked out for him, and it's probably going to work out well for him because I expect he's going to win. We shouldn't have to talk too much about this because we just saw this fight less than 3 months ago, and it seemed pretty clear how the fight was going. Alex Oliveira is an incredible athlete who is extremely dangerous at points, but like we've talked about earlier in the card, he's not a round winner, and he is somewhat over-reliant on his athleticism. He landed one really good piece of offense in that first round, a spinning back kick that kind of dropped Tim Means, but Means got back up. Oliveira hit some powerful takedowns on the cage, the lift slams, but realistically, that's just kind of draining his gas tank and wasn't doing a lot. And Tim Means was landing really good shots in the clinch. If he hadn't illegally kneed Oliveira, he was busting him up good. It looked like he was definitely on his way to getting a stoppage somewhere later in the fight, or at least winning a very clear decision. I see no reason that anything will be different here. Oliveira is a really dangerous guy. He could come out with a big lamping strike to win it, but I'm picking Tim Means to stop him somewhere later in the fight.
All right, Biggie, do you agree? Are you going to go with the Dirty Bird here, or do you think the other cowboy, the Brazilian cowboy, gets the job done here?
I am going to agree. I'm going with Tim Means. I think the fight's gonna, Tim Means found out that he can win the clinch, and so I think he's gonna go in there and make the fight dirty, just like his name says. He's gonna get in the clinch. He's gonna make it dirty, knees and elbows. I think he drops Oliveira and gets him out of there. This time with some more. These shots will be legal, and he'll actually come away with the victory here. I think it means gets the victory.
I am going Alex Oliveira by disqualification. No, Tim Means. I mean, he looked really good in that first fight back in December. He was bullying Alex Oliveira for the most part until, of course, he bullied him with a couple illegal knees, resulting in a no contest that, as Jed said, should have been a DQ. I think he, I guess, learns and doesn't throw illegal knees. I would hope as a Tim Means backer here. He's quite a bit better on the feet. He's a lot more gritty, a lot tougher. I think he gets Alex Oliveira out of there. I think we see a knockout or a TKO in this fight. Oliveira is the better athlete and maybe he's stronger, but he relies too much on, his physical ability and not necessarily his actual, mixed martial arts skills, striking, grappling, etc., etc. So Tim Means, yeah, the better striker. We saw it in the first fight. I'm not going to go on too long. I think he gets the finish here, and barring any illegal strikes, I think he gets the finish. So give me Tim Means there. Next up,
before
yes.
we go on, since we are lucky enough to have an actual like real life fighter right here amongst us,
I certainly am not a fighter, and Jed, I don't think you are either. So yes, we do.
I don't fight professionally in a cage. I fight with drunk, stupid people. But we have like one who can actually like fight and does so with a referee to stop him. I just kind of got interested as we were talking about this, because you mentioned your buddy Luke Sanders, who this same similar situation actually happened to. One could even argue that it ended up costing Sanders the fight. He was absolutely beast moding, lands an illegal knee that you could argue that changed the momentum. It certainly stopped him from having that kind of top ride position where he was beaten down. So like Mike, when you're in the cage, what happens like that? How do these things happen? How do you illegally knee somebody in the head if you're in a cage like that?
Yeah, I also had another teammate an actual teammate of mine who trains with us, Bellator superstar Emmanuel Sanchez, actually
Mm-hmm.
was beating Georgi Karikanian, and he threw a knee in the heat of the moment and kneed him in the head illegally on the ground.
Yep.
Honestly, what it is, when you see someone drop or you see someone on the ground like that, it's that, I can finish that kind of goes through your head. And so guys start to just kind of land strikes without thinking, especially if you got the fighter hurt, thinking it's just kill, 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 get the finish. And so I think sometimes you just get sloppy with your technique. You get sloppy with your thinking. You're just trying to really get them out of there. And I think that's, not having the maturation process to be calm. What I think a lot of fighters need to do to protect themselves and to show that, they're trying to make a legal strike is to use their back leg. If I throw my lead leg or my front leg, then, the only general area I'm throwing it at is the head or maybe a shoulder. But if I'm kneeing the shoulder, that's not that's not a good technique as well anyway. So one mishap and I hit him in the face. Like, I'm aiming for the body and I have a bigger target. And if one slips or they move, I think it's more clear that that is a accidental knee and not a, kind of just, sloppy throwing of an intentional knee to the head, thinking that the opponent was going to get up. And that actually came from the mouth of one of the bigger referees. I won't throw his name out there. He said that in the confidence of our locker room, but that was his advice to the fighter, was to throw that back knee. So at least they know, your intentions were not as to land the illegal strike. But me personally, I have never landed one of those. I just think it comes with, I think I'm a little bit more mature when it comes to landing fight ending shots in those positions. And I think I just pick my shots a little bit better.
Fair enough. I just figured might as well ask since I got you right here. Press on, Nick.
Alrighty, moving on. We got Betch Correia taking on Marion Renault in a women's bantamweight matchup. Kind of interesting. Renault is coming off that finish win in the third round. Correia, she's coming off the win over Jessica, correct? I believe so. Biggie,
Yes.
Betch Correia or Marion Renault, number 9 versus number 13 at women's 135.
I think Betch Correa is actually really bad. I don't know how she beat Jessica I have no clue. I just want to wipe that completely and utterly from my brain because that cost me a lot of money. I thought that was just a sure win for Jessica which is definitely her biggest win to date. I mean, other than that, it was the man who followed Ronda around for such a long time. But I think Marion Reneau goes out here and I think they get into a war on the feet. Neither of them really have a lot of fight-ending power to the head, at least. I know they go to the body and attack the body very well. But I think this is a pretty, even fight. But I think Marion Reneau has the better offensive wrestling if she chooses to use it. I think that she will be on the feet. Bethe Correia kind of just, she throws. She's not afraid to get in a fight. Marion Reneau is the better technical stand-up fighter, and I think that she'll get the victory here.
And Jed, what do you think about this matchup, Marion Reneau and Bethe Correia?
So I agree. I don't agree anymore, but I used to also think Bethe Correia was not a very good fighter. And I don't think she's like gangbusters. In a lot of ways, she is like one of the lowest skill level people to ever challenge for a legitimate UFC belt outside of the very early days. But I do think she's actually made some real stark improvements in her, like, within the last year, and that's why she was able to beat Jessica Eye. It's why she was competitive with Raquel Pennington, who we've seen, is one of the top women's bantamweights in the world, who likely ends up fighting for a title at some point in the future. She's not a great athlete, but what she is she is tough and she throws volume, and that wins you a lot of fights just in life, and especially in kind of a nascent division. Like, women's bantamweight is definitely getting better, but it's still a division where literally just those two qualities is good enough to take you pretty far, because it's still so kind of new. And those are the reasons why I'm going to pick her here, basically. I think Marion Reneau, a lot of people had some high hopes for her coming into the UFC. She's a great athlete. Like, you can see it. She's got fast twitch muscles. She covers distance super well when she does throw her strikes. You expect a lot more out of her, and yet and she's got skills in all levels too. She's a good grappler and a competent striker. But she has just underwhelmed me a lot. And I think her best phase is to get into the clinch. And if she gets in the clinch with Correia, she is definitely a bigger, stronger, will be able to kind of control that and work knees like she did in her last fight with Milana Dudieva. But outside of that, at range, Correia is not like great, but she's just going to punch her a lot, and it's not going to knock her out, but it's going to win rounds on the scorecard. If Reneau shows she has all the tools to win this fight, it's just whether she chooses to use them. And until I see her consistently do that in the UFC, it's just hard for me to pick her. If you had told me a year ago that, like, that's the type of thing I might have said about Bethe Correia. I've been like, I can't ever pick Bethe Correia to win a fight in the UFC. Are you kidding? And now a year later, I'm like, well, I know what she's bringing. I know she's going to throw 12 punches a minute, and she's going to be in there the whole time, and she's a decent enough defensive wrestler to stay on the feet and do that. So I'm picking Correia. I don't feel great about it, but I'm doing it.
Fair enough. To add on to your point with Reneau, my biggest issue with Marion Reneau is just the fact she doesn't look to be, fighting 100% almost ever. She has the tools to do actually fairly well in the UFC just in general, and in this matchup as well, even specifically. But she just always seems like she's fighting at 70%. Her output isn't there. When it is, I mean, she's a dangerous striker. She's a good grappler, but she just doesn't let it all go, and that's very concerning when you're fighting Bethe Correia, who's known for her output. And is Bethe Correia the most talented women's bantamweight or the most technical? No, but I mean, she throws and she hits somewhat hard. I'm actually a little surprised because she's known in a way for her knockouts, but only 20% of her wins have come by way of TKO knockout.
She doesn't hit hard at all. She just hits a lot.
Yes and no. We can agree to disagree in a way. But Reneau is she's good in the clinch, but I see this one being a grappling match. I think Marion Reneau gets Bethe Correia down. I think she knows that that's where she can beat her. the easiest. I think she's going to take advantage. I think Renault gets her down, and I think it's tough if it's going to be a submission or a late finish like that or a decision. But I'm going to go Renault. I think she's obviously by far the better grappler by a mile, and I think she knows that. I think she gets it to the ground somewhat easily and grinds out a victory. So give me Renault by unanimous decision.
Look, if Marion Renault comes out to wrestle, I'm gonna feel like a jackass because if she chooses to wrestle and grapples, she's probably going to win. Betch Correia is actually a very good defensive wrestler, but Marion Renault is miles better on the ground. But she doesn't ever wrestle. She just doesn't do it. I think she has 2 takedowns in 5 fights in the UFC. Like,
it's true.
It's kind of maddening because she's like a talented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and just like doesn't do it. So until I see it, I gotta pick Correia.
I'll send her a text right now and tell her to take Correia down for us.
I mean, look, don't do that because I'm not a real fighter nor a coach, and so if she has a game plan and somehow she listens and I fucked it all up, I'm gonna feel like an asshole. But
as you should.
I'm just saying, if she wrestles, I'll probably look like an ass and she's gonna win. But I have no confidence she's gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to call. I mean, she's hit or miss, obviously, but I mean, when she's on, she's a lot better than Betch Correia, and I'm just gonna hope that she's on for this fight. So we'll see how it goes. But give me Renault, as I said, by decision, gets the takedowns and wins somewhat easily. Next up, we got a really intriguing flyweight matchup. Number 3, Jussier Formiga, probably the best flyweight to not fight Demetrius Johnson yet. I guess thanks to the loss to Henry Cejudo, taking on number 8, Ray Borg. Biggie, let's start with you. Ray Borg, the Taz Mexican Devil, the slight underdog here. Actually, the lines might have just flipped. Let's see. They are, I think, dead even. Borg, Formiga, who do you got here?
Depends where you go.
Yeah, I think this fight actually depends where you go as well. I think that they're both skilled on the ground, but I think that what you said about Ronnie Yaya, I think you have to say about Jussier Formiga. Yes. He is Damian Maia-esque. I wouldn't say he's there, but he's very close in the fact that he is a very skilled back taker and he controls that position the best. He with those long legs, he body triangles people and they can't get out. He might not submit you, which, we saw in the Dustin Ortiz fight, who's a friend of mine. Dustin was able to get out of some of those positions and, do fairly well. But once he locked it on in that full body triangle, it was really hard for him to get out. And that's what Jussier Formiga brings to the table. Not a talented striker, but he is someone who doesn't care. He'll throw down. He throws a big 2-3, 3-2, and he throws it hard. Ray Borg has the youth, the athleticism, and the better striking. So if he, he likes to go to the ground too. He's a very talented back taker as well, but he's more athletic with that back take than he is technical. And I think that's the difference between the two. And that's where I think that he would better to keep the fight on its feet. He has very good defensive wrestling. He has very good offensive wrestling. So if he feels like he can be better on top, he can do that later in rounds. But if I'm him, if I'm his coaches, to Jackson Wink, I think what the game plan should be is stay on your feet, outbox, outstrike this guy, and come away with the victory. I am going to pick Ray Borg. And I didn't know about the weigh-ins. I don't know how he did. His weight normally scares me.
He did make weight. He didn't make weight, so that's a plus.
Oh, he didn't make it again?
No, he did. 126 on the dot.
I was going to say, shit, you're scaring me. So since he made weight, I'm taking him. If he would have missed weight, I would have definitely picked against him. That's something that he's got to get corrected if he wants to fight for a title soon.
Yeah, totally agree. Almost the John Lineker of the flyweight division. Maybe we'll see him at bantamweight. He was actually planning on moving up, so I'm not really sure what happened with that. It's interesting because before we get to you, Jed, I just want to make a point. Borg, to me, has been improving on the feed, working with Brandon Gibson now. Jackson Wink made the move from Fit NHB, also in Albuquerque. He's a better striker, but he also has a reach disadvantage by 4 inches. So Formiga might actually be able to keep the distance if it ends up being striking match. We'll see. Jed, do you like the Brazilian here, or do you think the Taz Mexican Devil, the youth advantage comes into play? Do you like Ray Borg here?
I think Mike was pretty damn spot on with everything he said. Formiga is probably the best or second best in MMA at taking and controlling the back, behind maybe Michael Chiesa. Like they both sort of have that similar skill set at just always getting to a back and being able to hold that back. And that's a great talent to have. I think the one area I'll disagree with Mike. I actually think Jussier has improved a lot on the feet. He's not Anderson Silva. He's not Jose Aldo. I guess it's a more apt comparison as teammate at Novo União. But I do think that he has things that he is good at. Like Mike said, he is willing to throw, that counts for a lot. I also think he's developed a decent counterpunching game. Not great, but it serves as a quality complement to the fact that he is such a skilled grappler. I think Ray Borg is improving as a striker as well. Working with Brandon Gibson means he's probably going to look even better than he ever has at this fight. That's the thing that gives me pause with the pick, is that Ray Borg is so young and he's working with one of the best camps in the business. So he might just come out and look like dynamite. It's tough to say. Usually when we're talking about established veteran versus rising prospect, I usually fall on picking the prospect side, because it just seems to me that historically the prospect wins more often than not. This time I am going to go with Formiga, because I don't think that he is. I think that he still has a run in him. He's still not old. I think he's 31 or 32. A win here probably gets him the next title shot at Demetrius Johnson, assuming Wilson Hayes loses. Which I just sort of assume everyone thinks Wilson Hayes is going to lose his title fight. But if Wilson Hayes fights and loses, I think a win here does put Formiga in line for a title shot. I think Ray Borg needs takedowns. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that he likes to take down. He shoots a whole hell of a lot of them. And if he does that, Formiga is actually a really good defensive wrestler. His takedown defense is like 80%, 85%, something like that. And from there, like I said, if Ray Borg starts shooting in on him, I think he's going to get stuffed, and I think you're going to see Formiga backpack it up. And as talented a grappler as Ray Borg is, it's like Mike said, I think Formiga is a little more technical, whereas Ray Borg is still a little reliant on his athleticism. So I'm going to pick Formiga to win a super fun grappling-based decision.
Now, question to both of you. If Borg outgrapples Formiga overall, how surprised would you be?
I personally wouldn't be super surprised, just because it's MMA. I mean, once you add punches and you add, the humidity, especially in Brazil, the amount of sweat that they'll have. Ray Borg is very talented in the fact that, like I said, he's athletic, and that's how you can get out of a lot of positions against a talented technical grappler, just by being super athletic and explosive, especially in the no-gi setting. If it was more of a gi setting, I think the technical person would win no matter what. But I would not be super surprised adding punches, elbows, and stuff like that Ray Borg would somehow out-grapple. For me, I will definitely be surprised. I would be surprised if he submitted him. Like, man, that'd be a feather in his cap. But to out-grapple Jussier, for me, I wouldn't be super, think it's far off.
Right. And Jed, what about you?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, if he submitted him, I'd be stunned, just straight up. I think Formiga is a really talented grappler. If he just wins a grappling based fight, if he won every exchange, maybe I'd be a little surprised by that. Right. But it's like Mike said, this is MMA. Things are different. Formiga is not like some mythical god on the ground. If Ray Borg can, I think Formiga can stuff his takedowns, but if Ray Borg can end up on top, I think he's a good enough grappler to not let Formiga sneak to his back if he gets an established dominant position. I would be kind of surprised if Ray Borg swept Formiga, because Formiga is so good at his top game. But I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. I was just like,
right.
Okay, way to go, Ray Borg. You're better than I thought.
Right. Fair enough. I am going to go Ray Borg here, I think. This is another really tough matchup, and that's why I like this card so much, is because I've probably said that about every fight we've talked about. This is a tough one to call, maybe minus a couple. Formiga is an excellent grappler. Borg is a really excellent grappler as well. I give the edge there to Formiga slightly, but Ray Borg is only 23 years old. He's getting better every day. I mean, this is a guy, you look at him and he's going to be the type of fighter who you can see significant improvements within months, within fights. And now with the move to Jackson Wink, I think that helps him a lot, especially in the striking department, working with Brandon Gibson. We saw that in the Lewis Mocha fight a little bit. His striking looked a lot better overall, and I thought he actually had a bit more power behind his strikes as well. So that was really good to see. That could come in handy against Formiga, who I actually agree with Jed. I think he's becoming a fairly decent striker as well. He at one point definitely not known for that, but I think he's getting better. It's tough on the feet. Formiga has the reach advantage. That's a bit concerning as a board backer, but I think we see this fight contested on the feet more than a lot of people think. I do think we see some great exchanges on the mat that are close. I think both guys end up on top at of each other at one point in the fight. I think Formiga will land at least one takedown. I think Borg will land at least one takedown. I think it's going to be a really close fight, but I give the edge to Ray Borg. He's a more athletic guy. He's younger. He's getting better. Formiga, sure, he's getting better, but I think the improvements are going to be a lot more distinct for the American. So I'm going to go with the number 8, Ray Borg, to get the biggest win of his career. But Formiga's so good. If he outgrapples Borg, obviously, I can't say I'd be surprised one bit. And that brings us to what I consider the best matchup on the card. It's an excellent lightweight clash. Edson Jr. Barboza taking on Beneil Dariush, number 5, versus number 9 at lightweight. Jed, are you going to go with the Edson Barboza or Beneil Dariush?
Before I get into that, I do just want to say, if you are sitting at home and watching us, you should also turn on your TV and throw it on to Access TV Fights. Mackenzie Dern is about to fight Catherine Roy. They're walking to the cage now. So just know that you guys should all watch that too. Because Mackenzie Dern might mess around and do some wicked shit on the floor. Like, that's just straight up.
Speaking of great grappling, yeah.
Yeah, her omoplata rear naked choke, whatever the fuck that was last year, like she's fighting a girl that's 1-0, and it's probably going to be awesome. So do that. Other than that, I'm with you, Nick, on the fact that this is a really great fight, because we're talking 2 top 10 lightweights, probably the best division in MMA, 2 of the best guys at it. That's just high level MMA, which is great. I feel a little more confident in picking this fight, though, so it's not my favorite fight on the card, I guess, because I think Edson Barboza I think he's coming into his own, and that he may be the best lightweight on the planet. I don't think he has a real reason to claim it right now. Not, there are 4 other guys who have these bulletproof resumes, but his last couple of years have just looked so good. He has improved so much. He is one of the best strikers in the division and in the UFC. And he is, and always was, when he was allowed to operate at that distance that he wants to, where he can just kick the shit out of people because he's the best kicker in MMA. But now he's added this kind of pocket boxing game to complement it, to give him 2 ranges to fight in, and make him really just incredibly lethal. And I love Beneil Dariush. He is one of the better grapplers in the game today. A guy, he worked with Kings MMA, so he brings that fun pressure style on the feet, and he is an excellent control artist, passer on top. A year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, certainly, I'm probably picking Beneil Dariush confidently, because his game matches up so well against what Barboza has historically been bad at. Barboza has historically not been very good at dealing with somebody who's going to bring that aggressive, relentless pressure, and Beneil Dariush's pressure footwork is so good, and he's so good at coming forward and backing somebody up to the fence and then getting into the clinch, working them over, tripping them down, going on top. But I think Edson Barboza has just improved his footwork, improved kind of everywhere down the line, and Beneil Dariush is going to get caught on the end of punches way more often than he wants to, get chewed up with kicks on the outside. He's a tough dude and can maybe gut it out all the way to the end. I wouldn't be surprised by a late stoppage. I think 2017 is going to be a real big year for Edson Barboza, and he might be challenging for a title early next year. Depending on lightweight, that's the one thing about this fight. The winner of this fight should reasonably be like one win away from a title fight. 2 top 10 guys fighting each other, but the winner of this fight's like 4 wins away because lightweight is such a cluster right now. So give me Barboza. I think he'll make it look sensational.
I mean, any division with Conor McGregor at the top of it is a cluster, as you said, just because who the hell knows what McGregor's going to do next, whether it's take more time than he thought off because of his baby, or campaign for the Mayweather fight, or $5 million, who knows. So yeah, it's an interesting matchup, but unfortunately one that won't have the title implications perhaps it should, in most divisions. Biggie, Edson Barboza or Beneil Dariush? What do you got here?
Sorry, man, I gotta crush all those really awesome things you said about Edson Barboza here. I think that with the King's background, Benny, the thing is, the best part about Edson Barboza is his kicks. Grappling based, or a fighter who wants to grapple and take you down, the kicks are something you do not want to do as much. But Beneil Dariush is going to be pushing forward, and when you throw those leg kicks while your opponent is moving forward, that ultimately knocks your posture backwards. And I think Benny's going to be able to trip up one of those kicks, catch it, whether he catches it and keeps a hold of it and takes him down, or he just hangs that kick up for a second. That's going to allow him to throw a couple punches close to distance and get Edson Barboza to the ground. Edson Barboza has made huge jumps with his boxing offensively. His defensive boxing and striking is still not up to the level of his offensive striking, and I think that's where you're going to see him melt, is when you can't defend yourself when someone stands in front of you at range. It's really hard to defend yourself when someone is going to be pressuring you, because that's when you make mistakes. Edson Barboza is a freak in the first round, same fighter later on in the rounds, and I can see Beneil Dariush just walking through everything he throws, pressuring him, taking him down to the ground, wearing him out, making him physically tired, and then beating Edson Barboza up. I think he gets a close decision down in Brazil, but I think Benny gets it done. Just having the striking pedigree, Rafael Cordero in your corner, seeing those kind of kicks, those training, and he's training with a Glory kickboxer who is known for his kicking abilities. I think that he just is able to soak up the kickboxing side better than Edson Barboza will the grappling side and the defense at this level in his career. He's kind of stuck being the fighter he is going to be. I think Benny comes out with a victory here.
Well, this is, as I said, a very fun matchup, but unlike a lot of the fights, I feel like there's going to be a distinct winner here, and one where I'm confident enough to, not use the phrase, this is a tough matchup, and if anything happens, I won't be surprised. If Beneil Dariush goes out there and submits Edson Barboza, I would be fairly surprised, even though Dariush is a fantastic grappler. I just don't see him being able to get it where he wants it, and that's obviously on the mat. Edson Barboza has made huge strides in his striking overall, his boxing, and he's still, even better as a kicker than he was, although he's always been fantastic. I see him, just being a lot more dynamic than Beneil Dariush. He's a lot quicker than Dariush. It's a clash of styles. Does Barboza keep it on the feet, or does Dariush close the distance and get it down to the ground? Barboza's cardio is good enough to not fade and allow Dariush to take control in the later rounds. I mean, if Barboza was a one-round fighter, absolutely, he could give up takedowns in the later rounds, but he is good enough in all 3 rounds to not let that happen. I think he keeps it on the feet for pretty much the entire fight. Maybe Dariush sneaks in a takedown, but honestly, I really see Barboza, controlling the fight on the feet for all 15 minutes. He has the reach advantage well, so I like that. It is interesting because Beneil Dariush is a better striker than Barboza is a grappler, and that's obviously where they're the worst compared to each other. But despite all of that, as I said, I think Barboza does what he does what he does, keeps it on the feet, outstrikes the slower Dariush, and gets the victory. So give me Edson Barboza in a fairly fun fight, but not that competitive because Dariush is improving on the feet. He's very good, but I think Barboza is just fantastic. He's getting better, and I really, he's a top 5 guy for a reason. And Dariush, I like Dariush a lot, but he's number 9 for a reason. So give me Barboza by decision. And that brings us to the co-main event of the...
Sorry, I think the winner fights Michael Chiesa, or should fight Michael Chiesa.
Well, Dariush he just lost to Chiesa not too long ago. So if Barboza wins, I don't mind that matchup at all. Or I would love to see the winner versus Nate Diaz, but that won't happen because it's not big enough for Diaz. So, but yeah,
I want the winner to fight the winner of Alvarez Poirier.
If the winner of that doesn't get a title shot, I agree.
That's not getting a title shot.
If Alvarez wins, you never know. But it is Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor
title shot.
No, who is McGregor?
For him, by the time he wins, maybe Conor's ready to come back, and at that point, I assume that they're going to run back Nurmagomedov Ferguson at a later date this year, maybe well later because of Ramadan. Lightweight's a cluster, and it's so clustered up. I don't think they're rushing Alvarez back to a title fight.
Yeah, I completely blanked there for some reason. I don't know how. I kind of forgot about Ferguson and Khabib and forgot that they existed.
Well, yeah, if you forget about the best lightweights on
earth. Alvarez definitely not going to get a title shot, win or lose against Poirier. So yeah, Khabib, Ferguson, it's so messy, but yeah, I don't even know where we're going with that. But Barboza, I have him winning, and that brings us to the co-main event. Mauricio Shogun Rua taking on Gian Villante, number 6 versus number 12. Number 1, it's kind of concerning that Rua is number 6 at light heavyweight. Yeah, he was great at one point. He's, just not the same anymore, and that shows how shallow this division is. Rua versus Villante. Biggie, who do you got here?
I think Shogun Rua gets it done. Gian Villante is a, tough guy, obviously. He's a guy who struggles to make 205. He's actually a really, really big 205er. I saw him fight in Albany, and I watched him, have to cut some weight right before the scale. I think that Shogun Rua heavy punches on Gian Villante's chin early, and I just see Shogun making actually a resurgence, a short-lived one, but I can see him getting Gil Villante out of there early. I'm going with Shogun Rua.
Interesting. Jed, do you like the Brazilian here, Shogun Rua, or does Gian Villante pull off the minor upset?
I love that Mike kept it short because, frankly, I don't really want to talk about either of these next 2 fights. And I know that usually we talk the most about the main and co-main, but anybody who follows MMA knows why we don't really want to talk about them. I'm with him. I think Gian Villante is a huge light heavyweight, so that's cool. And he's getting better, which is always cause for concern. And the fact that Shogun is well past his prime, of questionable interest and still competing, never know what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, Shogun still hits absurdly hard, and he's still a pretty good counter puncher. He doesn't have quite the chin he used to, but he's still a good counter puncher. And I think that's enough against Gian Villante, who lacks defense, to put it kindly, and is willing to engage in a brawl. If Villante lands the first punch and that's good enough, I won't be shocked at all. But I think more often than not, Shogun's a good enough counterpuncher to just kind of put one on the very defensively weak Gian Villante. And frankly, if he chose to retire after this win, I know it's not like some huge marquee win, but it is in Brazil. It would be a nice win if he got it. I wouldn't hate that. So yeah, give me Shogun.
No, I actually wouldn't mind Shogun to step away at all, just because he's number 6, but that ranking doesn't really speak for itself. I mean, kind of going opposite of that, I don't think he has what it takes to really go any further than he is right now. So, with all of that said, I do see Shogun winning this fight. But that's more of a fade on Gian Villante. Gian Villante, yeah, he has the power shot to knock out Shogun if he lands, but he's so just defensively bad that Shogun probably pieces him up on the feet for 3 rounds and wins a decision. And it's kind of crazy that I don't see a finish happening, but I don't, just because their chins aren't fantastic. They could let go, of course, but I don't see Shogun landing. Ultimately, I don't see either guy landing the power shot to knock either guy out. Shogun is the more technical guy, as I said, though. Vellante doesn't have the defense, and the cardio is a big issue as well. A lot more active than Vellante, say, in the second and third round. I guess it really could go either way, but I'll give the slight edge to Shogun Hua, the legendary Shogun Hua, that is. Now, let's move on. Vitor Belfort versus Kelvin Gastelum in the main event of the evening. Gastelum is a very, very big favorite in this matchup, probably for a good reason. Vitor Belfort hasn't won since, I believe, the Dan Hendo fight at the end of 2015. I could be missing on some fight, but I don't think I am. And he hasn't looked good as of late, to say the least. Vitor Belfort taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum is on a roll right now. Second fight in a row at middleweight. Moved on up last December against Tim Kennedy. Got the third round TKO. Jed Vitor Belfort. Do you think he has what it takes, or does Gastelum get the victory?
Yeah, do we need to talk about this? Kelvin Gastelum's going to beat the shit out of Vitor Belfort. Like, it's going to be depressing to watch. Vitor Belfort's been fighting for literally 20 years. He made his UFC debut 20 years ago, I think in February. I'm not even making that up. Let me check that to make absolutely sure. But it was UFC 12, and when was that? Yeah, February 7th of 1997 is when Vitor Belfort made his UFC debut.
I was not alive, just for that, for what
I
it's
was
worth.
8 years old. Shit.
Yeah, like, it is that, dude, all due fucking respect to that, because the ability to stay fighting at the very highest levels for 20 years is fucking nuts. And look, Vitor Belfort could win theoretically. He still is an extremely dangerous fighter for about 3.5 minutes. And then after that, it's kind of tough to tell whether his confidence just drops or he gets gassed or what. But it seems that 3.5 to 4 minutes is really around the time that he kind of stops being all that threatening. So maybe he lands a punch early that puts Kelvin Gastelum in trouble. But I think Kelvin Gastelum is one of the best welterweights on planet Earth. I would absolutely love a rematch with Tyron Woodley. I think that fight is bangers. It's fine that Kelvin is fighting at middleweight. He's a tiny middleweight, and he's not really a middleweight. Like, that's, you and I, Nick, have had this argument before. But I guess he's a middleweight if he can't personally get his shit together, but his frame, and most people seem to agree, professionals in the, nutrition aspects and stuff, seem to agree that he is a welterweight and just has to take it seriously. And if he does, he's one of the best ones in the world. And because of that, he's an extremely good middleweight too. But beating up Vitor Belfort, which I absolutely think he's going to do, is not the same thing as beating up a Luke Rockhold or a Gegard Mousasi or the very top end of the middleweight division. So in a lot of ways, I hope this is his last fight at middleweight, because he'll be competitive and he'll be a top 10 middleweight because he's super talented. But it's not where he's going to do his best, and he's going to be so undersized. So it kind of sucks that Vitor's likely retiring after this fight and he's going home to get his ass beat. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. Like, look, even a prime Vitor Belfort might have had trouble with Kelvin Gastelum despite the size, because he's also a King's MMA product, just like Beneil Dariush. He has that same pressuring game, piles up a ton of volume, sneaky power that you like just kind of hits you a bunch and suddenly you realize that, wow, this has added up and I'm really hurt. And that's the type of game that always gave Belfort problems. Now we're talking about a faded Belfort. Like, he's just going to get the shit kicked out of him, and it kind of depresses me that I'm going to watch this. So Gastelum, early stoppage. I'll say early second round.
All right, Biggie. Kelvin Gastelum or Vitor Belfort? Obviously, Gastelum, a big favorite for good reason. Do you think Belfort does he have a chance here?
Vitor Belfort always has a chance, but like he said, in the first couple minutes of the fight, which Kevin Gastelum, I think the biggest thing he showed really against Tyron was just his toughness and ability to take big shots. Other than that, when you come in that heavy for a fight at welterweight, that kind of just takes everything, away from your accomplishments as far as what you've done there. But yeah, he gets the win here. Don't need to be long-winded. He finishes Vitor. I agree, early in the second round, maybe even late in the first round, just because if he decides to pressure him to the point he takes him down, I think every fighter in the last 5 or 6 fights for Vitor has been able to pass his guard and mount the jiu-jitsu black belt and just beat him in the submission. So it's going to be sad to see a legend get done like that. Going down here, whether it's the first or second round, just depends on the mental toughness of the Vitor that shows up tomorrow night on Fight Night.
Yep. Well, are you done? Or I think you glitched out. Yeah, I like Kelvin Gastelum here. I think everybody does. Vitor Belfort, sure, he has a chance, but it's a very, very, very slim one. If he swarms Kelvin Gastelum in the opening minute or two, maybe he could get the knockout, but Kelvin Gastelum has a very, very good chin. He is super durable. And he doesn't go down easily. I mean, in his two pro losses, he lost two close decisions. Of course, to the current welterweight champion in Neil Magny. So, I think he wins here all day. I think he ultimately almost looked better. Has looked better at middleweight than welterweight. Welterweight is honestly, as far as this day and age and weight cutting goes, that's his proper weight class. But as a guy who hates cutting weight just as much as everybody, or more than that, I'm fine with Gastelum at middleweight. He's not cutting nearly as much. It's safer, it's healthier, so I don't mind it. Stylistically, if Belfort swarms him, maybe he catches him, but Gastelum is a fantastic boxer. He's a great wrestler as well. He has more ways to win. Obviously, he has better cardio. He's younger. He has all the advantages. Vitor Belfort, ever since USADA has come in, and ever since he, hit 36, 37, he hasn't been the same guy ever since TRT was banned. The odds are obviously in Kelvin Gastelum's favor. I like him here big time, just like everybody else. Give me Kelvin Gastelum by second round CKO. If Vitor Belfort somehow makes it to a decision, that would be shocking, just because he will be, in the fifth. Vitor Belfort in the fourth or fifth, that's unimaginable. So not going to happen, but just, if it does, that would be insane. So there you go. UFC Fight Night 107 in the books. So let's move on. And Biggie, I don't know if we did this when you were still doing the show regularly, but we're going to give out who we think will win Fight Night and the performances. I don't believe you did, because I think we started that when Wes Riddle came aboard a little while back. So Fight Night and performances of the night. Jed, who do you got for your bonuses?
Performance of the night, picking Kelvin Gastelum just because like everybody thinks he's gonna beat that ass. So that seems like a pretty good one. As far as a second one, I don't know. I'll pick Hua. I'll pick Shogun because I do think he's going to get KO. So decent chance there. As far as fight of the night, man, there are just so many really well-matched fights here that might be fun as hell. I am going to pick Beneil Dariush versus Edson Barbosa just because they are two top 10 lightweights going at it, and so that often leads to really good, exciting things. So that's mine. Also, just on the other tip, Mackenzie Dern is about to walk away with a unanimous decision off of her third pro MMA fight, and she won pretty clearly, but I'm going to pump the brakes on her as a prospect. She's clearly a fantastic prospect, but she got a lot of growing to do. That's what I learned after that 15 minutes. So I'm done with mine. Those are my picks.
Alrighty, Biggie, who do you got for Fight Night and performances? This is just looking at the card. It's more, it's harder than usual, just because, as Jed said, a lot of well-matched fights and some that either, could be surprising and be quick finishes, or ultimately could be, tight decisions. Who do you got for your 50K bonuses, though?
I am going to go with Beneil Dariush getting a performance bonus. I'm going to also go with Shogun getting a performance bonus, and I'm going to go with Juicy A Formiga and Ray Borg getting the fight of the night honors. And the Mackenzie Dern thing, just man, she's unbelievably hot. But the weight issues. I mean, I think you have to pump the brakes just on her weight issues as far as making 115 pounds. But don't get me wrong, she's my kind of woman. I love a woman with those kind of curves. Mackenzie Dern, if you see this, I would love to take you out on a date. All right? But,
I love it.
In all honesty, I think she's got to make the weight, and fighting somebody 1-0 and not being able to get the finish there just tells me she's a young fighter in the aspect of MMA. Jiu-jitsu, she's a goddess, but in MMA, I think she needs some more time. We need to stop rushing her because there's not a lot of popularity, outside the UFC as far as 115. I don't think she's actually a 115. I think she's a 125er, and I think she should fight Angela KGB Lee next, actually LFA, up to 125 and take that fight.
Yeah, I agree. I actually was watching the fight as well, and I mean, it was impressive enough. I mean, it was a dominant win, but maybe not what we were, some people were expecting from, a super hot prospect from like Mackenzie Dern. Definitely stopped the hype. Is she UFC caliber? Maybe, but I mean, does she have a lot of growing to do, as what Jed said? Absolutely. Mike, you have to stop, talking bad about her. The date's not happening.
I know,
even talking the weight issues. That's
we know some people who, I have some connections as far as, mutual friends in the jiu-jitsu world. So I'll make it up to her. I'll take her out and pay for dinner, and we'll be good to go.
All right, fair enough. All right, my performances, as I said, tough to call because they're also tough fights, and the grappling matches, like the 3 grappling matches that stand out for Miga Borg, Reyes, Ramos, and Yaya Soto. I mean, they could either be really exciting or really sloppy and really boring. I mean, more the prelim ones for sloppiness. But so I'm gonna avoid those. I'm gonna go Fight Night, Barboza, and Dariush, and my performances: Gastelum and Tim Means. So there you go. Gastelum, Tim Means, and Barboza and Dariush for my performances. And let's give out our DraftKings team, which I have ready. Jed, do you have a team ready to go? Let's see if I can make one while you say it.
Yeah, I do. This week you are talking to the back-to-back DraftKings winner of our little prediction outlet here. But this week I don't feel super great about my team because it's just a weird one, man. I've got Edson Barbosa, I've got Ray Borg, I've got Betch Correia, Kelvin Gastelum, Kevin Lee, and Davi Ramos. I basically built my team around the idea that I am almost certain Kelvin Gastelum gets an early stoppage, and he was extremely expensive, and so then everything else sort of was leveraged around trying to come up with a way to get points elsewhere. So that's my team. If you do this, don't follow me for this. I'm probably going to be shit this week.
Alrighty, let's see if I can. Actually, I'm not going to sit here and make one and try and I don't know what I'm saying, but let's give our shout outs and plugs and whatnot, and I'll give mine out later. Jed, appreciate the time as always. Let the people know where they can find you on social media, your writing, your podcast, anything else you got to plug away.
Hit me up on Twitter at Jed K Meshew, JEDKMESHEW. You can find any and everything I do gets linked to there. Other than that, every day my work is at MMAfighting.com. In case y'all forgot from last week, that is the award-winning MMAfighting.com media outlet of the year, back-to-back for the World MMA Awards. So, check that out. Tomorrow I'll have a column going up with my analysis for this fight card. So give that a peep if you like. And that's it.
I'm going to say they didn't forget that you're award-winning just because we probably spent 15 minutes on that last week. But
I'm going to make sure
reminders are good.
I'm going to make sure for the rest of the year nobody forgets that shit. Back to back.
Interim title over here. I mean, remember it, people. My team just made it right now. Ray Borg, Marion Renault, Francisco Trinaldo, Joe Soto, Kelvin Gastelum, Edson Barboza, Jed. I assume you don't write that fast. Let me know which ones you missed.
I got it.
Okay, cool. Biggie, let the people know where they can check you out on social media. If you have fight maybe in the works, let the people know the details. I don't think you do. I know the Bellator, of course, unfortunately didn't go as planned, stepped up in short notice. Maybe you want to talk about that. Go, say anything you want. Plug away, social media, shout outs, whatever.
Yeah, my social media is all the same. It's Team Rock Biggie, TEAMROC BIGGIE. That's Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, even my gamer tag. You can catch me on Xbox Live, Call of Duty, Battlefield. About to buy that. What is it? Honor, whatever it's called. I'm about to buy that. Everyone keeps telling me to get it. I love to play against you guys on there. Build my army. I'm trying to be like Demetrius Johnson in them and get that Twitch hookup, start making some money off this stuff. But yeah, the Bellator situation, got a call on short notice to fight Kendall Grove. Well, I actually didn't know who it was. They were just like, can you make 85 by this day? And I was like, hell no. They was like, what do you think you can get to? I said 195. I was around 221, 223 when it first got brought up. And then the next day, I actually got the offer. I was about 218 at that point. I had just trained. Found out it was Kendall Grove. Said yes. Flew out to Thackersville, Oklahoma. Only was able to make it down to 201. I mean, I lost 22 pounds in a little over, 30 hours. So gave it a valiant effort. Just came up a little bit short. So right now, I'm actually just letting my body heal. My organs and everything else like that. Giving it a break. Still getting active, training wise, eating clean, trying to get my natural walk away back down. I used to be a welterweight. I'm just naturally a bigger guy though. So, look out for some fight news. Hopefully not too soon, but in the near future. Other than that, you can catch me at Mike Biggie Rhodes fan page on BiggieMMA.com is my website. And just thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you guys for having me. I know it's been a while. Randomly hit me up, man. I might have some time here or there where I'm able to jump back on the show. I just know I don't have the time to do it consistently. But thanks for having me back.
Sounds like a plan. Appreciate you stepping up on short notice, of course. And anytime you are available, hit me up for sure. You guys can find me on the Twitter as always at NickUFC. You can check out my writing over at bloodyelbow.com. You can check out my podcast also on bloodyelbow.com, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Google Play, pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast. The MMA Circus. This past week, episode 101, we had ACB flyweight Zach Fun Size McCoffey on the show. Great chatting with him about parting ways with the UFC, his new contract with ACB and whatnot. So really fun time chatting with Zach McCoffey on episode 101 of the MMA Circus. I think that's it. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. And with that, enjoy the fights.